So, I mean, will I add anything to this by reading to it? By reading it, I guess, only to say that Wellwood sort of has he differentiates into a couple of categories. Again, more categories. So, talking about premature transcendence, taking on the garb of transcendence before you have earned it, and idealization. So he has those two major categories. And they tie up reasonably well with Mark Epstein's. And of course the with Chogyam Trungpa's. And that is basically what happened to me as I was putting this presentation together. So, boy, all this sounds like very similar stuff. And they're each a useful lens on what's happening.
Could you go through them? Because
Yeah, sure.
just to kind of space it out.
I'm running through these in my mind, and just the examples are just tumbling over each other. I mean, the one that really just leaps out at me is this idea that we're all one, and therefore, if you make any kind of judgment about another person, you are bad and evil and wrong.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so that's postmodernism gone wild.
Yeah, I've had people say to me, "Well, who are you to judge?"
Yeah.
And I say, "I'm a person with a brain, with the power of judgment." And so you're telling me that I oughtn't to use it?
Yeah.
You know,
So how will I choose what to do? How do you choose what to do?
Yeah.
Do you make judgments?
And
No.
that will come into your epistemic, the stages
Absolutely.
of
Yeah, yeah,
epistemic
yeah.
knowledge.
Mhm.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it's an argument that we have with Vivian's sister in several different guises quite often. The materiality is low and spirit is high.
That never happens.
Never happens.
See, I'm still struggling with that one in so many ways. You know, that interplay, because the tradition from which I'm coming is so rooted
rigorous
in
on
that
it.
idea.
Right.
You know, that you have materiality, and that's all shite, and then you've got spirit, and that's
That's where the good
pure
stuff is.
overcoming.
Yep.
Mm.
And well, it's not quite that easy, is it?
Mm.
So.
Mhm. Yeah, the ultimate dualism. Yeah, well, we have purity there again, and I've got must in parentheses because there are two varieties here. There's the I keep myself pure, the narcissistic one, yeah, and the anxious one. I must keep myself pure, anxious, obsessive,
Or I will be damned.
or I will
Right.
be damned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely, yeah.
So I have to own that one creeps in for me.
Mm.
Which one with the
That
must?
I must keep myself pure.
Right.
Because I've spent a lot of time with traditional Christian stuff in the last 3 or 4 years, and so much of that language is about different versions of purity and different versions about righteousness and stuff. And I grew up in that tradition, so I've got less mature aspects of self connected to that. The tradition itself has writings from periods where that was very much the way one looks at things. And I've got a 20-year chunk in the middle of my life where purity wasn't an enormous concern.
Well, you're not going to get to heaven.
You are damned forever.
Yeah.
That doesn't worry me so much. What I get tripped up on...
Because you'll have friends there.
Yeah,
And I don't
most
like
of my church
heights.
can join me. What I get tripped up on, and it kind of sneaks in subtle ways all the time, of whether I'm practicing the path correctly if I continue to do this thing that I've been doing for 10 or 12 years, and that's at various levels.
Yep, yep.
None of it's criminal, just for the record. But various things of various kinds, from diet to sexual behaviour to just simple stuff like, should I be paying any attention to my body at all? And some of the church fathers are pretty strict on no.
Yeah.
Should I own anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I wrong to be owning anything other than a pair of sandals, a robe, and a stick? Is that somehow incorrect?
In some thermal underwear. No, I agree. I mean, and these things, they keep
Yep.
coming up and going.
And if you
There's
ask me from a rational space,
Yeah.
do you think this is the case? I go, well, of course not. That's completely
Yeah.
crazy.
Right.
But it creeps in the back. It's,
Oh,
there's this
absolutely.
little voice in my ear, you know.
Yeah.
But this is where our culture
St.
comes
Clement.
in. We are steeped in this. You know,
Yeah.
we grow up, whether we are raised in, you know, any sort of theistic,
Sorry.
you know, family or not, the culture breeds it, you know, that there's right and wrong, pure, impure in some way or another. You know?
Yeah, I always think of the story of Immanuel Kant at the end of his life, having his servants tie his hands down when he went to bed, so that he would not inadvertently pleasure
Touch
himself
himself.
while he was asleep.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, the sort of extreme.
Yeah.
I would think even a sort of psychotic.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's beyond neurosis at that point, and
Depends
that's
on the
that is a psychotic
Hmm.
Well, it's-
kind of take on purity.
It's so much, yeah, and sort of, you know, the sinner material. You know, there's something so wrong with him that he cannot personally find any resources within himself to do something about it. He
Mhm.
needs external help to
Yeah,
prevent him
yeah.
from it. Yeah.
But again, you know, let's broaden it out. Look at the Indian caste system. You know, this is based on, I don't know it well enough, it's based on at least 2 levels of purity.
Oh, yeah.
One in which there's none, and, the Brahmins, of course, the Brahmins are wonderful and descending. So a lot of these things, a lot of these ways of thinking, whether they're in the healthy range, in the more problematic range, they seem to be human characteristics.
Mm.
You know, they're not particular to any society. They're expressed differently in different societies, but they seem very much to be human characteristics. So,
And there is a healthy version of all.
of all of these,
absolutely.
And I keep thinking of purity. And again, if I disregard concerns for purity and I don't
Yep.
bathe and I don't, wipe myself when I go to the toilet, and there are consequences to that are
Absolutely.
more or less objectively negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read this book once, can't remember its title, but in it it said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." That's the
what
one.
my name
You've probably read
means.
the same book.
That's what my name means.
Uh-huh.
So- Right.
Catherine, yeah, that's what they say. It means
Katharos.
purity.
Ah,
So
okay.
And
Yeah.
that's the
Katharos.
quote
Pure.
that always goes
So
along
the issue is
with
not
my
with
name.
purity. It's I think it's the attachment to the purity.
Right.
It-
Yeah.
There's,
Yeah.
there's a very, from a Buddhist point of view, I can come up with a very healthy interpretation of that, right? Because, it's talking about it's talking about purity of motivation and purity of, I'll just simplify my way, purity of in thinking about others, right? And I think one of the things that happens in many religions, and Mundy's theory, you'll note this day, is that we do get stuck on words, right? So purity, and in religion we have statements that we tend to absolutize, and we tend to take the word from the domain in which it was intended, which we may not be aware of, and plonk it onto another domain,
Yeah.
where it becomes
Well, we concretize it.
Mhm.
pathological.
Yeah. So, these things.
Frankenstein.
It's down the hall.
I want to let Vivian finish.
Yeah, just going on from what you said, these things probably are just the sort of the ineffable core of most spiritual traditions, the sense that probably we've all had when we have some kind of transcendent experience about the purity and the fact that it is apart from the world, and it's all of those things, and people have tried to then write about them in scripture or those experiences, and because of who we are, it will just be stepped down into something that you have to do on the physical level.
And that applies to the physical level.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
Well,
Yeah.
I'm
Hilarious.
going to make a similar point with a slight twist, just to take Wellwood's notion of premature transcendence.
Mhm.
People that write the things that end up as scripture are usually people writing from a certain stage of realization, writing about their own experience.
Or state.
Or state, yeah. Or,
Yeah.
or sometimes stage. You know, like
Stage,
sometimes
yeah,
a stable
sure.
realization if they're
Yeah,
writing
it's
about it
like
over a period.
Yeah.
So someone talking about purity or or undivided heart or pure heart or singleness of heart, which is Christ hopefully talking about a reality of what's true for him. But, you know, okay, then it's written down. So then anybody
Yeah.
at any point in the path can read that thing and go, yes, well that does sound like a good idea. I know, I'll make myself pure. So this is the negative side of fake it till you make it, which is something we talk about quite a lot, I think. Of trying to feign that you're able to do something which in truth is a fruit of a long road on the path
If you
and is an outcome.
you know, if you're a Philemite, or even if you're not and you just like Crowley, you know, there's a thing in his whole system that, you know, anybody from neophyte on up can turn around and say, well, you know, can turn around, make the vow and say, okay, I'm now
A master.
master of the temple.
Yes.
The
I will
only
interpret
Yeah,
will interpret every phenomenon
of the
as
universe
as a
as an act
particular
of God
dealing
dealing
of
with
God
my soul.
with my soul.
And
Notice the
and
my and the narcissism
yeah,
there.
and then and you with all the dangers that come with it, and then you go batshit.
Yeah,
Of which there's
absolutely.
numerous examples.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me that Christ has addressed this already in the Gospel of Thomas, where the disciples say, Master, should we fast? And he responds, do not lie, and do not do what you hate.
Right.
Which is
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
But
But it also,
talk
says,
about a
it also
difficult.
says in the Gospel of
command.
Thomas, if you don't
Yeah.
fast, you will not enter the kingdom.
Tricky, right?
You know, so it's
Yeah.
I think
Well,
there's a
it's to
great,
do it for the right reason.
exactly, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there's a great danger with this spiritual bypassing. A lot of people will buy into it. Say, I'm not going to spiritual bypass, so I won't do my spiritual practices.
Exactly, yeah.
I'll just
Yeah.
do all the opposite.
Yep,
You
we're
know,
back
and
to
then they're
that.
back into
Attachment to
the,
spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or to not,
You know,
not
so-
spiritual,
Right.
to not.
Yeah.
So,
So I think Tim made the valid point, is that you need to do your fasting, but don't fake it until or don't do it unless you're ready for it,
understand why
enjoy
you're
it,
doing it.
prepared to, do it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But I think it's an error if we say, don't do it.
oh,
Right,
absolutely,
right,
so do
right.
I.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's
The cause always, you know, notice out on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, understand what's going on here.
yeah, the razor's edge. But also given that fasting could have not necessarily just meant food or water.
Absolutely.
It
You
does.
know,
Restraint.
it meant
It's
restraint.
mindfulness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you know, when I engage on a fast, I don't starve myself for 40 days. But what I try to do is be extremely mindful of what I'm putting into my body.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that this is where our Muslim brothers and sisters have a really keen beat on this. That, you know, if you're told that you must abstain from something, for example, the eating of pork, and you are going to die, rather, you know, if you don't eat the bowl of bacon in front of you, to use a horrible example, you eat the bacon.
Yeah.
But you acknowledge that you are making a specific choice to do it. That the danger is when you do it without thinking. That's and when I think of the fast, where it says, okay, no wine, no oil, no dairy, just, you know, I think of the Great Lenten Fast, which is so strict. Does that really mean, well, you can't eat any of those things? Well, do I then start, you know, my, you know, great scheme of jiggery-pokery where I can, you know, make
Fruit of the
exceptions
potato.
and
I can't have wine. but
yeah, I can't
this
have wine, but
bottle of
I'll
vodka.
drink vodka because that's not fruit of the grape; it's fruit of the potato. You know, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if I start doing that and I start playing that legalistic game, it's not about being mindful. It would be more appropriate and more in keeping with the fast for me to go, you know what? I need a drink. I'm going to have a glass of wine, and that's how I'm going to deal with my, you know, my situation.
And
right
after I
now.
shake it off, I'll repent.
And when I shake it off, I'll repent. But I'm going to do so mindfully. I'm going to do so thinking about it, rather than thoughtlessly reaching for the fourth martini.
Yeah. And then that's where it comes into having a community, a spiritual partner, a spiritual mentor, because then by talking it out with them, they are more likely to highlight our shadow aspects. Why am I having a glass of wine? Why am
Yeah.
I telling myself about
Yeah.
the potato versus the grape?
Mm,
You know, whereas we may not know that ourselves. It sounds perfectly rational to me why I would have vodka instead of wine.
Mm.
But I say that to someone, they go, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that when I was doing my just a meatless fast for this past Lent, and I found myself more angry at myself if I, without thinking, slapped the sausage patty onto my breakfast sandwich in the morning, than if I said, well, you know, the kids really want chicken tonight, and so I'll have some chicken. You know, it was the thoughtlessness of it that bugged the crap out of me, and I think rightly so. I think rightly so.
Mm. I'm going to hit one here, which we haven't touched anywhere else specifically. It's part of other things, but the last one in the first list, denying the relevance and presence of feelings and emotions. Feelings and emotions in general, but usually it's particular ones, like anger, for example. You know, there's a lovely note down here in which, if we look at the change in complexity, Tim, that doesn't scroll. There we go. All right. Complexity.
Bloody mess.
We have the problem of seeing anger itself as a hindrance, to be replaced by compassion for people who habitually repress anger. So that's one way of moving healthily. And then a more complex level, and we'll come to complexity later, is the complexity of feeling anger ourselves and understanding the corrosive nature of attachment to it, while holding compassion for he who is offended against us or against decency, and understanding the corrosive nature of the attachment to the compassion. So, you know, I think that you don't get a cursor up there, maybe not.
Yeah, you do.
Yep.
Oh, there it is.
It's very
Okay.
tiny.
It is very tiny, isn't it? But that one is part of denying our humanness, and it's a bit related to materiality is low and spirit is high. But we also parcel our emotions between high and low emotions. Right, so there are good emotions and there are bad emotions, and we're gonna
Anger isn't wrong. The people I'm angry at are
well,
wrong.
well, there's that. There's that
Thank you,
as well.
Lance.
Yeah,
Hey, that's great. I like it.
So,
That's
Well, I
usually
mean,
how I feel.
In the Western philosophical tradition, all the way, you know, starting at you know, at least from Plato, you know, emotions are part of the bodily part of the soul,
Yeah.
and this is the terminology that Plato uses.
interesting. Yeah.
And I think that there's good reason for that, because there is, with any emotional response, a physiological component to it. And so associating it with the body then associates it with gross materiality, which means that having emotions is somehow unspiritual. And this is so embedded in Western culture that it's very, very difficult to allow ourselves to feel those emotions without that degree of attachment, where they take on a reality of their own.
Right.
So-
Attachment or aversion in Buddhist terms, right?
Yeah.
So, which is negative attachment, of course. So, all right, I'm going to move on because we are moving through time here. So,
We should probably take a break by about 2:45.
yes, I
Just a
think
short
so.
one, but
Yeah, let's do that. So that will mean a scamper through Fowler and reflective judgment. So what I've done here, and it's more explicitly brought out in the article with tables and things, is a pair of researchers named King and Kitchener back in 1994 did some studies on the development of cognitive complexity in inevitably American university students, right? So we know more about American university students than we know about anything else in the world. study hasn't been replicated, which is a problem, but there we go.
Hard to get replications published these days.
Absolutely. Okay, so now they have a 7-stage development of epistemic complexity. Sorry?
Controversial.
It is, isn't it? It's an odd number. And we have 3 major stages. So they talk about pre-reflective thinking, quasi-reflective thinking, and reflective thinking. So the 3 pre-reflective stages are, they line up with Fowler's stages, intuitive projective, which I think is 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
1, 2, and maybe 3. This one is quite interesting, looking at the implications of Fowler and the implications. But basically, what we're talking about here is the realm in which knowledge is real and absolutely certain. I can know the truth one way or another. I might only be able to know it through my senses. I might be able to know it through my senses or being told the truth by somebody in authority. In stage 3, we get to the point where the knowledge may be uncertain, but the uncertainty is temporary. Sooner or later, we're going to resolve this one way or another, and it will come down either through sense belief or authorities. And until that point, we're talking about my belief. Right? So this, you can, I don't know, I hope you can see how this ties up with Fowler and the implications of it for talking to the person, right? So if we're going to talk to somebody about what we know, or try and help them in expanding what they know, one of the things that we may have to do with them, and again, this is something that you can't just pour into somebody, it's something you've got to lead people to, education, leading out, is to help them complexify their ideas of what it means to know, right? To begin to understand, and that really means to begin to understand the limits on our ability to know. So we move into the quasi-reflective stages, which both, in my judgment, seem to match up with Fowler 4. And the differences are a bit subtle here, but we're in relativistic territory here, or relativism, not relativistic. Insult to Einstein. So we're really only talking about interpretations, folks. You know, nobody can really know anything, and your interpretation is as good as mine, and you know, what are we arguing about? This is pointless. But
I run up against this on such a regular basis in the classroom, and it is more often than not a fear of being wrong. This is what drives this, because I'm afraid to be wrong. Therefore, if I couch everything as a matter of opinion, I can never be wrong. Because I can just establish that it's my opinion, and my opinion is no more or less valid than your opinion. But you know, the very real problem that I encounter with this is sometimes my opinion is better than yours, you know, because I've spent the last 25 years of my life forming that opinion. You've spent 3.5 minutes on Wikipedia. Guess what? My opinion is worth more.
It has bigger
Sorry.
weight. Yeah, exactly.
And getting students to move beyond this. And I think that when you talk about it in relation to Fowler, in this individuative reflective stage, you know, developmentally, when are people hitting that individuative reflective stage? It's in their early 20s, These are exactly the people that I'm finding as my undergraduate students.
And that's the whole thing. It's like frontal cortex is still not fully developed, and so they still, which, it's anywhere from between 21 to 25.
Uh-huh.
So they don't yet have the hardware. We really don't understand that. It's really
See,
important.
that's outside of my wheelhouse, so that's really
I
interesting
teach
for me to.
developmental psychology, so it's like we keep expecting undergrads to kind of get it, but they don't actually have the hardware yet.
But remember,
That's-
remember though,
Yeah.
remember though that there are 50, 60-year-old professors who will kill to defend this.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh,
it doesn't
yeah.
mean,
They do have the hardware, but
they don't have the
it doesn't
hardware,
mean that
right.
you automatically get
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, so it's very interesting, and then we can get into trying to untangle. So, with a 60-year-old professor who is still using this knowledge, so has he or she stayed there because they're attached to those things that they learned in those wonderful youthful years,
Mhm.
or what? Or is it really the way they see the world? And then,
Yeah.
if it's my job to help them move forward, I need to know that in order to know how to work. Okay, so we're coming up on break time. We go to the last two, I take you to the last two stages, ladies and gentlemen, of reflective thinking. And I've lined both these up with Fowler 5. And
Maybe we should read these out though.
yeah, I will do that. So for stage 6, we've now moved into, going back to the other stage, knowledge is uncertain and knowledge is contextual and subjective, right?